Bienvenidos a El Chuco Sportscast con tus anfitriones Mark Tep 25 y Red MT 25. ¿Qué pasó, mi gente? Es Mark Tep 25 otra vez. Bienvenidos a un otro episodio de El Chuco Sportscast, episodio 31. ¿Qué pasó, Mario? ¿Cómo está?
Bien, ¿y usted, bro?
Muy bien. I'm freaking feeling great, dude. I'm just, I'll be honest, dude, last week it was kind of fucking weird. Ay, güey, el sábado pasado, güey. Like, we were about to start, and then out of nowhere, I get a call from my wife. Where the fuck is my car? And I'm like, what the hell? So we go outside. Her car's fucking missing. We're just like, what the hell? So we go look, and then, we're just like, dude, this is bullshit. We just got that parking permit. And next thing you know, we go to the front office like, yo, something's off. We got our parking permit yesterday. And now we're figuring out where our car went. Did you all get it towed? And I was like, oh, well, that shouldn't have happened. And then they look within the database. We found out they double leased a parking spot. Like, it was the stupidest thing ever. Like, que pendejos, dude. Why the hell would you not look into that shit, man? So, yeah, it's just one of those fucking weird-ass shits that we have to freaking figure out. But, yeah, anyhow, let's kind of just get everything else started. I kind of wanted to share that, and that was the whole reason as to why last Saturday we didn't even have an episode. So, yeah, we're just going to move on and transition to our stuff. So, right now, we're going to do our Spanish word of the day. I'm actually going to do a couple, only because the one previous to this one, el 22 de octubre, has a pretty good one. You know, 'tis the season, right? Es la temporada. But the one we're going to do for today, el 23 de octubre, is el abismo, which means the abyss. Ejemplos. En el fondo del abismo solo hay oscuridad, dijo el viejo monje, which means at the bottom of the abyss, there's only darkness, said the old monk. So I'm guessing that's from a story or something. But yeah, there's that. And then the second example is el monstruo vencido se precipitó al mismo. No, perdón. Se precipitó al abismo. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Mi lengua. So the monster vanquished, plunged into the abyss. Vencido. Vanquished.
Yeah.
But there's that one. But I wanted to talk about the one from yesterday, which is embrujar, which is to bewitch. Since, like I said, it is the season of Halloween and all that shit. You know,
and just so people
know.
Yeah, and just so people know, bruja means witch. So embrujar, to bewitch, yeah.
For those of you that don't
exactamente.
know.
So the examples. Un hechicero embrujó al héroe y lo convirtió en un insecto, which means a sorcerer bewitched the hero. I can't speak today. The hero and turned him into an insect. So wow, it's pretty crazy there. And el otro ejemplo se dice, la reina nunca actuaría de esta manera. Alguien la debe de haber embrujado, which means the queen would never act this way. Someone must have bewitched her. So, yeah, 'tis this season. So we thought to give a little bit of a Spanish lesson today, as we do on every episode. So now we're going to continue on to the next thing, which is the Dallas Stars schedule. So currently, the NHL season started on October 14th. The Dallas Stars are 2-2 right now. They beat the Rangers 3-2. They lost to the Bruins 3-1. Senators 3-2. And then they currently just beat the Penguins 2-1. So it looks like the Stars are starting off at a kind of 50-50 on the season. Hopefully they improve upon that, and I hope the best for the Dallas Stars, because last season they were plagued by injury. So next, we talk about the Dallas Cowboys schedule a little bit quickly. So currently, the Cowboys are on a bye week. They've been having a pretty good season overall. And the Cowboys are going to be facing the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming week. They've been kind of struggling as a team, the Minnesota Vikings. And what we can tell is like they have a pretty decent receiving core, but even then, they can only do so much. Kirk Cousins is still slinging it, but he can only, again, do so much. The defense for the Minnesota Vikings has been garbage. So the Cowboys should be able to win this one. I mean, they kind of struggled against the Patriots, but they managed to pull it out. So I'm happy for that.
Yeah, I know.
Down the line, they have the Broncos, Falcons, and Chiefs.
Yeah, well, I could just hope that with Dak, the whole thing about him pulling his calf, hopefully it was nothing serious. I don't think it is because he's going to have he has had this week to rest, and he'll have next week to rest up, so he should be good to go by the time the 31st rolls around. So.
Yeah, because I think he tweaked something, and then he was like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I should be good for the next game."
Well, yeah, he did throw that last pass to Lamb on one foot. He landed on one foot, so he may have, came down on it a little weird and So that's why it's always careful. As a quarterback, you got to be careful not to throw off balance because you can't hurt yourself like that. But yeah, I pray he should be fine, and then hopefully some of the other players that have been hurt will be able to come back and give it to the Vikings, and then everyone else they play. So I can only pray.
Yeah, exactly, man. And overall, I think it's going to be a pretty interesting season for the Cowboys, or at least the remainder of the season. I think they should be able to beat the Vikings, Broncos, and Falcons, although the Broncos are starting to look a slightly bit more formidable than one would think. Again, the biggest test would be the Chiefs and the Raiders moving forward. But, one week at a time, right? So as far as the NBA season, it started October 19th, but for the Dallas Mavericks, it started on October 21st, which was Thursday. So they played against the Atlanta Hawks, and it was, in all honesty, a very abysmal showing. The Mavericks just could not get it done against this Hawks defense. Luka was being pretty much not stopped per se, but definitely he wasn't having his way, especially when you have DeAndre Hunter and pretty much Cam Reddish. They were both doing pretty well against Luka, guarding him. And then in general, it was just a crazy game. There was a lot of struggles overall. You had KP, who I think finished with 11 points. Sorry, if you're watching this on the screen when you're watching it via YouTube, for some odd reason, the thing is not showing the statistics. So how about this? Let me redo that again and see what happens. Let's see, because now it's showing yeah, there we go. I refreshed it, and now we're back on the money with this. Okay, so as far as the Mavericks, the overall look with them is that Dorian Finney-Smith finished with 5 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. From what I've saw, the shooting percentages on all these players was not very good, especially from 3. And even the mid-range was just really faltering. Kristaps Porzingis, 11 points and 5 rebounds, which is abysmal to me for a guy who's 7'2". He might as well be 6'2", pulling up that amount of rebounds. That's pretty abysmal. And then 4 points and 4 rebounds from Dwight Powell. At this point, it's just looking like really, really bad as far as the center position. Dwight Powell, I don't think should be the starter at all. Luka Doncic, he had an okay game, but again, not up to the standards we're used to seeing him. He had 18 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists. Kind of at the beginning, he was trying to get his teammates involved, but they just weren't knocking anything down. He was being a little too complacent, and then he starting to shoot a little bit more, but he was not making his own shots. He was kind of cold. And a lot of people are saying, he looks out of shape again. And I don't know. I mean, the guy has cooked people, whether they be in shape or out of shape. So it is what it is on that. Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't play horribly, but he could have been a little bit better. I mean, he had 14 points and 2 rebounds. Jalen Brunson, I think, was the second best player for this game for the Mavericks with 17 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists on pretty decent shooting splits. Maxi Kleber was struggling. Reggie Bullock, he didn't really play all that much, which was kind of surprising. I think he's still getting limited minutes because I think he was injured at one point. Willie Cauley-Stein had 2 points, 6 rebounds. Sterling Brown had 5 rebounds, 3 points. Trey Burke, 5 points, rebound, 2 assists. Josh Green with 2 points. So that's the Mavericks. So pretty abysmal showing, especially when we look from quarter to quarter. I think their worst quarter was the third quarter. They got destroyed in that third quarter.
Oh, outscored by 15. Yeah, that's not what we're used to seeing. So, Jason Kidd and team have to have a lot of work to do. The Hawks are nothing to scoff at. They're going to be dangerous. So they gotta up their game, man. Because if you look at freaking Trae Young, I know he's been able to put up a lot more points than he's showing right here. But damn, bro, we saw him last season. He's dangerous. So, gotta step it up. But yeah, it's only the first game of the season, so there's still a lot more games to be played.
True, but I mean, that's a pretty bad showing if you ask me. Like that's not very good. But the Hawks, I mean, even when Trae Young, because Trae Young, he put up 19 points, 14 assists, and 2 rebounds, so a double-double on points and assists. He was struggling at first. So Trae Young and Luka, the two main stars of these teams, were pretty much struggling in this game. But the only difference being that the Mavericks, their best bench players and other rotational players just weren't stepping up well. Whereas the Hawks, they have really good depth. I mean, John Collins with 16 points and 9 rebounds. DeAndre Hunter with 11 points and 3 rebounds. Clint Capella, 12 points, 13 rebounds. Like, again, Clint Capella was just eating. Nobody was able to stop him. Bogdan, my bad, not Bojan, Bogdanovic with 11 points and 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Kevin Huerter, 6 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. So, again, the rebounds were definitely in favor of the Hawks. Like, they were just out-rebounding the shit out of everybody on the Mavs. And then Cam Reddish with 20 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist coming off the bench. So he had a really good night. Oh, and it looks like DeLon Wright went to the Hawks. So, I mean, he didn't score anything, but he had 4 rebounds and 3 assists. Gorgie Jang with 9 points, 6 rebounds. So, yeah, just a lot of people with 5+ rebounds. Some even having close to 10 rebounds on the Hawks. So that was the big issue. We couldn't box them out. And then as far as our shooting in mid-range, they kept overdoing it. They was not a very balanced offense, not a very good game plan at all. And this is, I know everyone's going to say it's just one game. And I totally understand that. But I kind of knew this was going to happen. Like, this was just abysmal showing. 33% total field goal percentage from the Mavericks throughout this entire game. That's horrible. 30.2% from 3-point. I mean, they were making their free throws, so they were doing work at the line, but everything else just was not falling. Again, like I said, I mean, total rebounds, they had 5 rebounds less than the Hawks. Freaking Trae Young probably contributed because he had 14 assists, the majority of their 31 assists, where the Mavericks had 16. So there's still not enough ball movement because, again, Luka's having to dominate the ball to try and create offense because nobody else really can. 9 blocks on the Hawks, which is crazy as hell, man. Like, they're going to be a juggernaut defensively. 8 steals. They were both pretty similar as far as turnovers. The only difference being that the Mavericks didn't capitalize on their turnovers, whereas the Hawks did. 46 points in the paint. That was the big issue, man. 46 points they allowed in the paint. That's horrible.
See, and that's one thing I feel Jason Kidd needs to address. Yes, if you see the opportunity, take the jump shot. But if it's just not falling, get the easy 2 and drive it into the paint, man.
That's how.
Well, no, but that's the thing. They were doing a lot of mid-range shots that just were not good. They could have passed to make better open shots. Like, they just were not falling. A and B. Some of them were just stupid contested. And again, I saw some clips of Kristaps Porzingis just not. I mean, he had one good leaning fader that landed, but for the most part, I don't know what it is, man. For a guy his fucking height to not be able to bully the smaller defenders, even develop a hook shot, something, man. Because you just trying to shoot over people like that and just missing is that's pretty freaking bad. Or even not even developing a, no spin moves, no nothing. Just I don't understand him. For a guy that height, he should not be having this much of a struggle. So I just hope he turns it around, but it's looking back to the way it was last season. And I've been saying this, the Mavericks did not make any moves that moved the needle. They were all lateral moves. And again, I hope that later on the season, things get better and I'm wrong. But let's be honest, that was a horrible, horrible game. And Luka can only do so much. We can't, he takes some blame in some of this, but he can only do so much for this team.
No, agreed. I
Same
mean,
team. Like a majority of the pieces have been the same for the past 3 years, and the best we could do in free agency was get pieces from the Knicks. Like really, that was it. I don't know.
I mean,
it was just frustrating.
I mean, I know I agree. Is but it also another thing is like all those pieces you got. Like you said, Luka can only do so much. He's only one guy. He's one superstar on that team. Everyone else, there's a handful of the guys that are doing their best to support him and get the job done. But the bench really needs to step it up. If you look at that was one of the difference makers between Atlanta and Dallas. Their bench was involved and was getting points, getting rebounds. And so these guys, I would hope the bench takes a lot from this game to say, hey, we need to rebound more. We need to get points on the board. Things like that. That's what separates good teams from great teams. It's like the great teams, not only do they have great starters, but they got a great bench. And Dallas needs to improve on that. And I hope Kidd and company does that.
That's the hope. But again, his rotations made no sense. He kept forcing, like the rotations were forcing the mid-range instead of finding a mid-range shot that made sense. They just kept forcing it. The passing was, I mean, again, there was no good enough ball movement. Luka again had to be the main distributor to create the offense. And that's, again, we don't have anybody besides maybe even Brunson. Brunson is probably the only one I can see, but they have him coming off the bench and they can only do so much with that. So hopefully Jason Kidd makes the necessary adjustments moving on for today's game against the Raptors. But I'm having a slight feeling that the Raptors are gonna run run the Mavericks over today. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, they played today at 6:30 p.m. So let's hope the best for our Mavericks. Now, what I want to kind of move on to, for those of you listening here on Spotify Greenroom with us, we're going to talk about the NBA 75th anniversary team. So this team pretty much consisted of the players that were on the 50th anniversary team, as well as new additions. So as far as the players we're going to try and quickly name all of them. So we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Ray Allen, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Carmelo Anthony, Nate Archibald, Paul Arizin, Charles Barkley, Rick Barry, Elgin Baylor, Dave Bing, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, Bob Cousy, Dave Cowens, Billy Cunningham, Stephen Curry, Anthony Davis, Dave DeBusschere, Clyde Drexler, Tim Duncan, Kevin Durant, Julius Erving, Patrick Ewing, Walt Frazier, Kevin Garnett, George Gervin, Hal Greer, James Harden, John Havlicek, Elvin Hayes, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Sam Jones, Michael Jordan, Jason Kidd, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, Jerry Lucas, Karl Malone, Moses Malone, Pete Maravich, Bob McAdoo, Kevin McHale, George Mikan, Reggie Miller, Earl Monroe, Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, Robert Parrish, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Bob Pettit, Paul Pierce, Scottie Pippen, Willis Reed, Oscar Robertson, David Robinson, Dennis Rodman, Bill Russell, Dolph Schayes, Bill Sharman, John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, Nate Thurmond, Wes Unseld, Dwayne Wade, Bill Walton, Jerry West, Russell Westbrook, Lenny Wilkins, Dominique Wilkins, and James Worthy. So those are the players that are on the 75th anniversary team, with some of these being additions. So there were 76 players because apparently there was a result of a tie within voting. So one extra player got placed upon this list. So it's a pretty interesting list. A lot of people were a bit up in arms that a lot of the previous players from the 50th anniversary team were on here, which is like, why would you be pissed? Like, they're just as important in the history of the game as anybody else. Like, there's a reason they were selected the first time around. And I get it. There's some players that you could say and make an argument for that might be a little bit better as a player, but it's not just the statistics. It's not just that. It's also impact as well. I mean, and again, this becomes very much a very opinionated sort of debate. Because there's players I can understand that probably you wouldn't put there, but then there's some players I'm like, I don't see why they're there. And also some that are like, I argue, no, yeah, they definitely should be there. A lot of people were pretty much vying for Carmelo Anthony. Oh, if he doesn't get on there, it's ridiculous. And it's like, look, I mean, he got on there, so kudos to him. He's there. I'm not a fan of it, but a lot of people are going to disagree with it. So it is what it is on that. People argued that, oh, well, Bill Walton shouldn't be on there. And it's like,
you're kidding, right?
You realize this guy won a championship with the Trailblazers, and you can say, oh, well, that was at an era that, you know, nobody was talented enough and blah, blah, blah. There weren't enough teams. Same argument that everyone uses against Bill Russell every time. And it's like, look, I understand what you all are saying, but that's not a fair assessment considering that they can only play who's in front of them. They don't control the amount of teams in the league. The league does. Yeah. So it's not like Bill Walton was just like, oh, let's keep it a minimum of this many teams so I can fucking win. That's not how that shit works, man. Also, like, the deal is, yes, you can make the argument, oh, well, he didn't have as much of a career because of injuries, and his weird antics have been kind of like overall diminished his career. But here's the thing. Yes, within the middle of his career, he started acting very fucking strange. I think he was on drugs. And then he came back, kind of got sobered up and played with the Celtics and won, I think, one championship with them. So I don't know. You can take that as you will, but I think he's just as important as far as NBA history as anybody.
Well, there's no doubt about that, man. I mean, for those that say that, I don't think they've done the research on that player and see what he contributed to the NBA. Because you and I discussed before, if it weren't for some of these players on this list, the NBA would have folded a long time ago. But because they continue to push forward and improve and make this game one of the best known sports, not just in the country but in the world, yeah, we would not have had the NBA today. And there's another issue when people try to compare players of old with, you know, players new. It's like, dude, you're looking at this player who played. When did Bill Walton play?
He played in the 70s.
Okay. You're trying to look
at 80s, yeah, 70s and 80s.
Right. You're looking at
this player through our eyes as of today, the present.
Yeah, through the lens of the modern game, yeah.
Yeah, you're
looking at, exactly, that's a better way to put it. You're looking at through the lens of the modern NBA instead of looking back at how the NBA was in the 70s and the 80s. And you know, we all do it. You know, I've done it before. It's like, I look back and think, wow, that's absolutely insane. Why would they do that? But I'm looking at it through today, not understanding how the mentality was then at that time in human history. So that's, in the sports, there's no, you know, you can't leave sports out of it too. It happens. So that's why I was like, wait a minute, guys, you know, you got to look at it you got to assess at how the league was then. And that goes with any player. And the same thing with Bill Russell, who played in the 60s and 70s. It's like, dude, remember, it's a different time, different era, different way of thinking, different structure on how the NBA was. You got to consider that. That does not diminish those guys' achievements then. So it's a problem that people need to understand. Like, dude, you got to look at it.
Rules were different too, man. Like there was things that the past leagues struggled with. They didn't have a 3-point line. Like, imagine if fucking Jerry West had a 3-point line back in the day. He probably would have won at least a couple more championships if you want to go on that route.
Oh, no doubt about that, man. Like, it's the progress with any country, organization, company, or what have you. It's supposed to improve throughout the years. Now, there's some cases where a lot of those things, countries, companies, or organizations, do they regress? Yeah, because of poor leadership and management. But most of the time, there's been organizations that have improved, and I think the NBA is one of them. So it's, you know, you got to look at all the changes that were made. Are there some rules and regulations in the NBA that we look at like, why? Like, why are you doing that? Yes, and that goes with any sports organization. But there's others that have improved it, you know, for safety of the players, health of the players, and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then just in general, like, I know that people like to look at the 1970s as one of the years where it was plagued by cocaine and all that stuff, and I will admit in those years it was a bit crazy and strange. But those players that stood out and actually did well, they still their impact cannot be understated. Like that, I think it's bullshit when people try to do that just because they played when there was a bunch of cokeheads and shit, and it's like, okay, but
yeah,
those cokeheads still probably won championships, some of those. So it's just like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like the league, it's not like the league stopped in 1970, like in the 1970s. No. So
but I think it was the fear back then that the league could have folded in the late 70s, early 80s if it wasn't for some of these players. I think I was reading somewhere where it wasn't for that, the league could have folded 40 years ago, but it didn't. So
yeah, and then of course, with the emergence of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, revitalized the league.
Yeah. I also think with the merger between the NBA and the ABA helped also, because here's a little fun fact for those of you that don't know. We were talking about the 3-point line. If it were introduced back then, a lot of guys would have put up some monster points and probably won a few more championships. Well, it turns out the ABA before the merger at the time had a 3-point shot in 1967. That's very interesting to know. But when they merged, of course, the NBA, they didn't have a 3-point line, so they didn't think it. It wasn't until the 1979-1980 season that they introduced it, and that's when
at least to that league before the merger. Yeah.
So
that's very interesting that it was the ABA did have it, but when they merged with the NBA, they didn't introduce it not until the late 70s, early 80s. So that's very interesting for those of you that didn't know that.
Alrighty, so let's at least continue, because there's some people have been debating that have been snubbed on this. So according to ESPN, a few beat writers for ESPN kind of gave their opinion on who they thought were the snub surprises and best of the best. So as far as some people that were surprised that they were included, like a lot of people were surprised that Dominique Wilkins was included, or at least to Kirk Goldsberry. So that was one person that they were surprised about. George Sindano said that Damian Lillard was a surprise to him because, just the overall accolades are a little bit less considerably compared to most of the players that were on the list. Ramona Shelburne said Bob McAdoo was a bit interesting. Marcus Spears said, again, Bill Walton. He said there have been other great players whose potential careers were affected by injury, like Grant Hill, Derrick Rose, Ralph Sampson, Yao Ming. Walton's inclusion on the list, however, wasn't affected by what he missed due to injury. Because as I stated earlier, Bill Walton won a championship with the Blazers. And then he came back sobered up and won a championship with the Celtics. So, that's my reasoning why I think that's okay. He put in the work and he improved and reestablished himself. So I think that's totally fine. Bill Walton is a huge part of basketball history, not just NBA, but basketball history in general. But as far as the NBA, I think it is fine that he's on this list. Some people will disagree, and I get it, but I think it's fine that he's on this list. So let's see. So Brian Windhorst said that Damian Lillard and Anthony Davis was weird to him because, again, the accolades are not as big. And whoa, excuse me. Sorry, sorry. If you're listening via the video, apparently the sound kind of played by itself. I don't know why that occurred.
Nah, you didn't share the audio, so I didn't hear it.
Okay, well that's good. But it came on my end at least. So okay, so now they're going to talk about the snubs. So which were the biggest snubs? So Sindano said Dwight Howard, Tracy McGrady, Manu Ginobili, and Kyrie Irving. So a lot of debate. Some people will think you're crazy if you said Dwight Howard should be, and some that think you are crazy if he isn't on this list. The thing is, Dwight Howard is a very interesting case because he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Throughout most of his career, he did great when he was in Orlando, and then he kind of fell off a bit. But I think he was super consistent even throughout his time with his first run with the Lakers, the Houston Rockets. Atlanta, he kind of started to falter a bit more, and then when he came back to the Lakers for their championship run. I think that kind of helped his case a little bit. Even though he wasn't the biggest part of that championship run, he still did his part. I mean, it was still minute though. So it's just with him, a lot of people are confused on that because of his overall accolades. So what I will say overall is I think I saw something about like Dwight Howard on Twitter, like his overall accolades. And it's, again, just the fact that he's a multiple-time All-Star and 3-time Defensive Player of the Year should automatically place him within the conversation. He should have at least been in the conversation. Sorry, let me... God bless.
And NBA champion, so...
Yeah, I mean, again, I think people diminish that one because of where, like, how he was and where he was at that point. So... But I don't know. A championship's a championship. You can make the argument about Jason Kidd like winning his championship when he wasn't at his peak either. So I don't know. So Dwight Howard would be one. I can agree on that. Tracy McGrady is one of those players that everybody loves, but he just, he didn't have enough success, especially within the playoffs, up until he joined the Spurs, and he wasn't even playing much for the Spurs.
Yeah, there's a few times where he was with Houston, and that's where he made most of his career. And we would watch him. It was like, dude, this guy is great. And I just feel he got jibbed of a chance to go farther in the playoffs and probably even a title. So I feel bad for him because he was a hell of a player. But of course, since he, like you said, he struggled in the playoffs and didn't even get to the finals, I'm guessing that's why he was off that list. So, I don't know. I'm on the fence with McGrady, but I will always respect him.
Oh, yeah, I love McGrady. But he'll probably, if anything, he'll get on if like 25 years from now, I bet you he'll get on the 100 players list.
Maybe. That'd be nice to see. And then Manu, I mean, if you have Duncan on there, why not put him up there? Because they more or less they were a team and they won the same amount of championships together. And then, and so I'm like, why wouldn't you put him on there?
It's because of his role. He was more so a sixth man. And granted, he was a very good sixth man. But there's a lot of people that would disagree for that fact, that he wasn't as much of an impact player as, say, because another argument can be made about Tony Parker, because Tony Parker has a fucking finals MVP. So if anything, I think he should be on this list somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say too. It's like those three, they were a big three. You and I growing up in the early 2000s, late 2000s, they were an unstoppable force. They would always give our Mavs a hard time.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, why not include Manu and Parker along with Duncan? Because they're just as worthy of that. But
I think it's just, again, who do you take off in place of them? That's just where it becomes an issue. Who do you take off in place of that? Sorry. Before we continue, Celtic Rick said Dennis Johnson. Yeah, Dennis Johnson was a hell of a player. I'm actually surprised he didn't get consideration this time around either.
Well, I'm guessing it's because, I'm not sure what the number was, like how many players have come in to the NBA since its inception. But since it's the 75th anniversary, they're only choosing 75 players.
Well, they did 76 because of the tie voting.
Right. Well, regardless, this is based off of, 75 years. They're going to choose 75 players. So, yeah, even then, it's like, you're right about, like, maybe when we get another 25 years down the road to the 100th anniversary, we'll probably see a lot more people on that list that weren't on the previous lists. So, but at least do not count them out for, like, sometime later on, because a lot of these guys will be in the Hall of Fame if they're not already.
Yeah, because there's some people that I think should have replaced some other players that are currently on this list, but I mean, I digress on that. We'll probably bring people up in a minute to discuss more of the snubs, but let's kind of continue on what everyone else, like as far as the ESPN thought. Kyrie Irving was another name that came up, and he's very polarizing again because he won a championship with LeBron. He's made finals appearances. He's been on all-star teams, and he's an amazing player. He has like really great handles. But his problem is his availability. Again, him being on the court kind of hinders this because, again, he's been so much time off, like hurt or due to his own volition decided not to play. So that's definitely partially the reason that he's getting hindered from being on this list.
Right.
I think that is a fair assessment. But I mean, if if you think you should be on this list, that's totally fine. I wouldn't think you're crazy. Like, I think Kyrie Irving is an amazing player, although I don't agree with a lot of his, his viewpoints. It is what it is. So Ramona Shelburne said that Paul Gasol was one that she thought got snubbed, which I think is a very fair point, because Paul Gasol was very key to those 2 championships as well. So and also even like the one that they lost, like he helped like get them to the finals with Kobe. So I think it's kind of crazy that they didn't put Pau Gasol on there.
Yeah, as much as I hated Gasol when he was with the Lakers, he's still worthy of it. He earned those 2. So, yeah, I agree with her too.
The only thing that I totally disagree with is like, what he did internationally for Spain. Okay, but that's for Spain. We're talking about the NBA. So, because that's why I said with some of these other outside accolades, I don't think that counts when we're talking about the NBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and again, Pau Gasol is an amazing player, and I agree. I think he should have also been on this list. But again, it becomes the fact of the matter: who do you take off? And there's a lot of old heads that want to keep the older players, which I understand, and there's a lot of younger fans that want to put new players in place of the older players, which I'm just like, I mean, they earned that place. So, hold on. We'll, as someone requested to come speak, I'll invite people up in a minute, but let's just get through this, and then we'll have people discuss this. Okay. So, in a moment, I'll bring you up, Adriana. So bear with us one moment. So as far as Marcus Spears, he talked about Paul George and Klay Thompson, Tony Parker, Alonzo Mourning, and Ben Wallace. So those are other players that are very, like, I mean, Paul George, I think he's still kind of, he's a great player, but I just think it's too early for him to be on this list, personally, at least to me. Klay Thompson, I would agree with. I'm surprised he was not on this list, considering what he has done on those title runs, and considering his 60-point game that he had, like, with the most 3-point shot, like he has the most 3-point shots in a game in history. How does that not, in general, put you, like, for even if we're not talking about the championships, the fact that he is not on this list, if freaking Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, like, to Michael Jordan could be on here, why can't Klay Thompson be on this list?
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that, because, that it's amazing what Klay Thompson, and Stephen Curry has done in Golden State. So, like, come on, you got to include that. Like I said, and then he mentions Tony Parker. Like I said, if Duncan's there, you need to include Parker in there as well. But like I said, Alonzo Mourning and Ben Wallace, all those guys. But of course, this is only 75 spots because of the 75th anniversary. So right there, you're only limited. But I feel, like I said, later on in the next anniversary, they will. I'm pretty certain that they will be on that list. Pretty certain.
Yeah. Man, Adriana left. I was trying to, be like, just try to get through this so then we can talk to people. I just wanted to get through this. So I'm sorry if I was taking too long, guys, but I'm just trying to make sure I get through this before we have a discussion. So then Windhorst also said Ginobili. Goldsberry also said Ginobili. And the fact, so it's interesting. He pretty much revolutionized the Euro step, is what Goldsberry says. I mean, I don't know too much about if that is the truth or not. I mean, if that is, that is an important, that could be a very important reason as to why Ginobili could be on here. But he does say he is biased, so whatever. And then, so there's a bunch of other people that were surprised. Like, for me, my surprises of people being on here were, like, James Harden and Russell Westbrook. I think it's a bit surprising that they're on this list currently. But again, a lot of people like them, so that's why they were voted on. And don't get me wrong, they're great players and they do have a case. But if Russell Westbrook is on here, I don't understand why Kyrie would not be on here.
I mean, Russell Westbrook has done some great things, but he still hasn't gotten. I mean, he got to the finals once, but they could not win it in OKC, and he hasn't been back since. So that's, I'm like, I don't know. But, what do I know?
Yeah, and there's some people that think that current players like Embiid, Luka, and Jokic should be on here, and I'm just like, nah,
too early for them.
That's a bit too early for them. Like, they still have at least 5 or 6 years before we can really consider anything of their career. I mean, again, not to say that they're not great players, but it's too early. It's way too early.
Right, and that's also another question I was going to, consider. It's like, well, then,
there are some younger players on this list. So then, what would constitute you putting them on this list compared to not? Would you have? Are they looking at how many years they've had in the NBA and what their stats and accomplishments have been?
I think there has to be a different set of parameters as to why some of these players are on here. Like, I guess I can understand James Harden because he's had crazy offensive numbers and he has an MVP under his belt. Russell Westbrook as well.
But they've been in the league for about 12 years.
So, I mean, and that's a good amount of time. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. There could be other players that may have had a better reasoning. But it again, I digress because people are never going to agree. But yeah, in a minute, we're going to bring up some people to talk about this. But yeah, once again, this is, if you're looking on the screen for the video, this is the anniversary team one more time. Una vez más. Y ahorita vamos a hablar con la gente. Let's talk to the people. So if you want to come up here, just send us a request and we can bring you up to talk. Or if you'd like, I can bring you all up to talk as well. Who would like to come up? Let's see. Well, let's see. I'll send the invites just to see if they're interested. And if you want to come up, come up. Alrighty, so let's see. I think Vince left. That's crazy. Vince is usually willing to talk to people. Okay, but anyhow, if you wish to come up, great. But yeah, overall, I guess I'm going to continue my thought process on players that I think should have been on here. Because, yeah, I think Alonzo Mourning is a very good point because he was freaking killing it every year within the league, whether he was on Charlotte or he was with the Miami Heat. Like for the longest time, especially with the Heat, when he finally won that championship. I mean, granted, he had a smaller role comparatively, but he still was very crucial to that Miami Heat run in 2006 with D Wade.
Yep, he was.
So it's a bit surprising that he didn't get on. A lot of people, I think, did Adrian Dantley make the list? No, he didn't. Another person that a lot of people were surprised that didn't make it was Adrian Dantley. I think that was I'm thinking of a different guy. Or am I? No, I think that's Skywalker, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was an amazing player. Like, I think Jordan looked up to him. And then another big name that people were surprised to not make the list was Alex English. Alex English was a juggernaut in the 80s, but again, he just faced up against a lot of competition with, the Celtics and Lakers and all that stuff. So, I mean, he was amazing, but, he can only do so much. So those are other players I thought should have made it. And granted, those are more old-time players, but, I mean, it's only fair that they get their fair shake too, right? So that's just...
Of course.
That's how I see it, at least. But as far as people that I thought was a little bit surprising that were on this list, like, let's see, Anthony Davis. I mean, granted, he's an amazing power forward. A lot of people think he should play the center, but for his time in the league, he's been very good. He recently won his championship with the Lakers. So, I mean, I guess you could make that argument as to why he's there, but I still think it's slightly early. If he wins a championship this year with the Lakers and like gets a finals MVP or even just wins another championship, I think then I can agree with this list.
I was going to say about Davis as well. It's like he's only been in the league how long? Like 5-6 years?
No, a little bit longer, but even then, I just think considering the amount of struggles he's had, and you could say, oh, well, that's not on him. That was his team. And although that may be true, that still kind of plays a part in this. But even then, he made the list, so we really can't say anything about that. I'm just surprised that he's on this list so early. Like, for example, like Stephen Curry. Like, there's no denying as to why Steph is on this list. If we're gonna get like technical with this, obviously Steph Curry he's a given. Obviously, he should be on this list
based on what he was able to accomplish in the last decade. Absolutely.
Yeah, Kevin Durant también definitely should be on this list. And people, again, will always like to discredit his rings because he was with a super team in the Warriors. A ring's a ring, guys.
Stop with that. Come on.
He still put up phenomenal numbers even on that team. Like, it's just the guy can't win. And right now with Brooklyn, because he didn't get them to the finals. He's no good. He's not the best player in the league.
Oh, please, enough.
Or like one of the best. Even if he's not the best player, he's still one of the best. So I don't know.
Yeah, and like no one. I'm not, degrading him or nothing. But for those that says like, dude, it just so happens that who did they play? They played Milwaukee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Milwaukee was a formidable team.
Yeah, Milwaukee just happened to have the upper hand.
Yeah, and they won the first game this season against the Nets. So
yeah, so it's like you and I both watched that conference that conference finals with those two, and both teams are going at it, but just Giannis and the Bucks were just able to.
They weren't in the conference finals. They were in the conference semis. Remember the Bucks?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hawks faced the Bucks in the conference finals.
Sorry, I got them twisted. My bad. Yeah, I mean in the semifinals they played against him, and it's just Giannis was able to get it together and help lead his team to overcome them. So it's like they're not diminishing the Brooklyn. They're still gonna be a contender. So there's always haters out there. It's like, dude, come on.
Seems like all our guests decided to leave. I mean, for those of you that were listening on Spotify Greenroom, thank you for at least listening. Hopefully soon we get some people that want to come talk with us, because I would love to have some more, engagement. So hopefully we can get some people soon. But overall, Damian Lillard, see, that was one I was a little surprised of too. And for the same reason, a lot of people are surprised, because again, his accolades, and granted, here's my deal. Like, it's a double-edged sword with him, because for many years, a lot of people thought he was very underrated. He was in a very stacked Western Conference. He put up phenomenal numbers, but again, because the West was so stacked, he was never going to get that bid to get an extra spot to go in until like other players were pretty much gone or all that. And you could say, well, then that doesn't make him a very good player. But I don't know, man. Like, if put yourself in his situation. Like, he can only do so much with the teams he's led. Okay, he's led teams in the playoffs, and he's made huge shots in the playoffs to get him past Houston, to get him past OKC. So I mean, there's a reason he's on this list, although I can see the argument for him that he shouldn't be, because a lot of people are like, well, if Damian Lillard's on this list, then Kyrie should be on this list, which I agree. I think if you're gonna put a guy on this list, I would put Kyrie, because he has had more success and he has a championship, albeit as the second option. But if you're going to make that argument, then if you're going to make that argument, he shouldn't be on there because he was the second option, then why is Scottie Pippen on here? You know what I mean? He was the second option too. He was like the first option for 1 year on the Bulls. But even then, like, Kyrie Irving, I think he had a better resume considering over Damian Lillard. So I can understand why I would put Kyrie over Damian, but I could see why Damian Lillard is here. But in my opinion, it's a bit early that he's on this list, in my opinion. As far as who else was on this list, obviously, like, nobody's questioning LeBron. If people question LeBron, they're fucking idiots. Kawhi Leonard is a very good one, because again, he's won 2 championships on 2 separate teams, Finals MVP. You can make the arguments, the Spurs, he had a really great team. I mean, yeah, but he still won Finals MVP as the defensive option against LeBron James. So I don't know. I guess that's saying something. And again, he won with a team that people didn't think were ever going to make the finals, even with him on. They knew they were going to be competitive, but they didn't think that they were going to win it all. So Kawhi Leonard defied expectations on that, made one of the most clutch shots in playoff history against the Sixers. So yeah, I think definitely Kawhi Leonard is important and is a good addition to this list. Let's see. I think Reggie Miller became an addition, if I'm not mistaken, or was he already on it?
Actually,
no. I think he was surprised that he was on it, because I don't think he made the first one. the 50th anniversary. I think he didn't make that one, but on this one he did. So I mean, there's a lot of people, especially there's this YouTuber named Legend of Winning that made a huge video about him being extremely overrated, and I get his points, and I understand that some of his stats were a little bit inflated as far as like a number of attempts where there were players that shot better from three, like as far as field goal percentage wise. But even then, dude, like Reggie was a phenomenal shooter, and yeah, you could say always longevity. But I mean, why is that held against people? Longevity should never be an argument held against people. If anything, that should be to their credit. I mean, granted, in some instances, I can see why longevity plays a part. Well, because I mean, he played longer. Obviously, he's going to have higher numbers in some regard. I mean, there's some people that have played long careers and don't have high numbers. So I don't know. But Reggie Miller being on this list, I think, is good because he's very important to NBA history, especially his playing in the playoffs. He helped get a team to the NBA Finals. So, I mean, even though they didn't win, that's still something. That's still like something that he should be credited for. I mean, there's plenty of players on this team, this list, like Karl Malone, who never won a damn championship, Damian Lillard, who's never won a championship. So, if anything, Reggie Miller definitely deserves a place on this list. As far as else, Chris Paul, at this point, like at first, I used to not give him credit because, again, I realize there's more nuance to everything besides, just the whole rings thing. So, I mean, there's some instances where I can agree, yeah, rings are not everything, but they are definitely the most important thing. So with Chris Paul, definitely everyone calls him the point god. And, if it wasn't for all those injuries, and see, that's the thing. If people are going to make the argument for Chris Paul to be on here, then Bill Walton should be on here. Yeah, he had injury history too. So I don't see why Chris Paul gets a pass to be on here with his injury history while Bill Walton doesn't, when people give Bill Walton shit for being on this list. So yeah, I think that's ridiculous. Yeah, I think Chris Paul, it was good for this list. Paul Pierce, yeah, very important. Kevin Garnett was here. Okay, yeah, I was about to say, I hope to God Kevin Garnett is here. He was very important.
Oh yeah, he better be on this list.
Yeah, he better be on there. So let's see. Dwayne Wade, of course. Yeah, there's no question. And again, I think Russell Westbrook is too early for me. I really think he's too early. Until he can prove that he can get farther in the playoffs besides with just KD and Harden, because that was an amazing team. I mean, he played well, don't get me wrong, but he just, especially nowadays, he's done too much and he's not looking good from an efficiency standpoint. So hopefully that changes and he wins a championship, because then after that, then I can at least place him on this list. Like, I can at least agree to that. But again, it all becomes a part of the game of who do you put on here? Who comes off? Because there's other people that people didn't like, that Pete Maravich was on here, that Bob McAdoo was on here, even though they were part of the original 50, I think. Or actually, I don't know if McAdoo was. McAdoo, I don't think he was. I'm incorrect. McAdoo was not part of the original 50. Pete Maravich was, though. Pete Maravich is, granted, his NBA career wasn't as crazy or good as his college career, but he still revolutionized the game as far as the way he would pass the ball. So that's something that cannot be understated in the least bit. So that's just how I see it at that point. Yeah, so I mean, sorry, I had that on mute. At this point in time, would you like to come up and talk with us, Vince? You can put a little hand up and request to come up and speak to us. Or let's see, let me send you an invitation to come speak to us as well. Because I would like to have some engagement, kind of talk about the whole situation with the 75th anniversary team, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of people that are kind of have mixed feelings about this list. Some very valid points, some not so valid. Again, I think you could make the argument for Kyrie. in my opinion, I think it's still kind of early, but I can see the argument for Kyrie at least over Damian Lillard. So that's one thing. There's, again, a lot of people that think the older players should not be on here because, oh, well, they played in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That shouldn't count, and blah, blah, blah. Why? It's part of fucking NBA history. This is all-time at 75th anniversary, so it's an all-time list. Obviously, these people get on the fucking list.
Are people actually saying stuff like that?
Dude, I swear to God, on Twitter, I see it everywhere. People are dissing all these older players because, well, they would get cooked in today's league. Okay, but again, you don't understand. If you put them in today's conditions, obviously they're going to have an advantage with that. So who's to say that they perform better or worse? Same thing if you put players of today in leagues back then. The rules were very different. They were very strict as far as the way you dribble the ball. Half of the shit you see today would get called for a travel. I'm not kidding. It would get called for a travel because I saw a video, I saw a game, a 1960s game between the Celtics and the Lakers. And it was fun. Like, I fucking enjoyed the shit out of it. Because it was amazing just seeing this happen at that point in time. And dude, I swear to God, there were plays I was like, wow, that's a fucking travel? Shit. That's a double dribble? Holy crap. They were strict. So I don't see, granted, not to say that the players from today wouldn't thrive or wouldn't do well, but to say that they would just completely shit on every other player is such crap. Because there's so many so many rules that they would not be able to get away with.
That too, but then also as far as like certain fouls back then, a lot of fouls that existed didn't exist back then. So there's some players that got a lot of way with some dirty play, got a lot of way with some dirty stuff. That you guys.
Oh, speaking of dirty teams, I mean the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons from the 80s. Right. I am so fucking surprised that Joe Dumars is not on this fucking list. The fact that Joe Dumars is not on this list. I mean, they got Isaiah Thomas and they got, Dennis Rodman, but Dennis Rodman was both the Pistons and the Bulls. But the fact that Joe Dumars is not on this list, if anything, dude, I would put Joe Dumars over Russell Westbrook. And I know I'm going to get so much shit for that. People would probably crucify me for saying that shit. But I think Joe Dumars was good enough, and he has a good enough resume to have been on this. You could say, well, he doesn't have a league MVP. I mean, even then, he's won a championship. He has a very extensive resume.
Yeah, for those of you that have not seen a lot of the ESPN's 30 for 30 films, I think most of them are well done. Go watch the Bad Boys of Detroit, which is the Pistons of the 80s. And you'll get to see a lot of those guys that were on that team and what they did. Yeah, they were dirty, but they got the job done. And I agree with you about Joe Dumars. He should be on this list.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. As a player, 2-time NBA champion, he had a finals MVP. Of course he should be on this fucking list.
Yeah.
6-time All-Star, All-NBA second team, 2-time All-NBA third team. People are going to say, oh, those are not as impressive. I mean, still, dude, that's something. 4-time All-NBA defensive first team. Okay, most definitely should be on this fucking list. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I don't understand why Joe Dumars is not on this list. Another person that, again, I think should be on this list, people like Ben Wallace, because he was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year as well. Yeah, he should definitely be on this list. But in my opinion, so should Chauncey Billups. And people are going to disagree all because his overall stats along the way were just not high enough and blah, blah, blah. And like, dude, he was part of a championship team that beat the Los Angeles Lakers that had Shaq and Kobe. And granted, you can say, oh, well, they also had Gary Payton and Karl Malone. Those two were out of their prime. That's still a freaking formidable team, dude.
Just because they're out of their prime doesn't make them useless, bro. It's like they can.
Although they did shit the bed in that finals against the Pistons, that doesn't make it any less impressive. The Pistons were not ever expected to win that finals.
Yeah, was it 03-04?
Yeah, they were about to four-peat pretty much.
Yeah, dude, we grew up watching that shit. That's why I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Yeah, Wallace should be on this list. Billups should be on this list.
Yeah, Billups, yeah.
What about Rip Hamilton? I would.
Rip, I mean, he had a very extensive career, but I don't think he's like kind of a Ginobili kind of deal where he, I mean, granted, he doesn't have as much championships. So, but I'm saying like in the sense of, hey, who do you replace for him? He's still like, he's a sense like he was more of a sixth man or just a role piece that was very good, but not the greatest. Although he's had a lot of great NBA finals and playoff moments. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he gets on the 100 players list, like Billups, Wallace, and Hamilton, I think should get on that list, if anything. Since they're not on this one. But I don't know. I think, if anything, Wallace or Billups should be on this list. People will argue, no, leave Billups off of it. And it's fine, but it cannot be understated. Winning a fucking finals MVP against the Shaq and Kobe Lakers? Come on. I don't know. But yeah, overall, that's what I had. I mean, that was another thing. People kept arguing about George Mikan because he, very early part of NBA history. It's like, why is George Mikan on here? Nobody even knows him. Nobody's even seen him. No, there's no fucking footage of him. It's like, dude, again, because the time frame was different. They didn't have certain technology, and they didn't have certain viewership at that point because it was still in its early stages. Obviously, you were not going to see footage because, again, guess what was still reigning king? The radio. So obviously, there were still more people listening to the radio than watching the television. It was still in transition of watching the television.
Yeah, and then also don't forget, baseball was still very big.
Yeah, baseball was still huge.
And football,
but more so baseball though. Like I think it wasn't until the 60s that football became king in the United States, and then the 80s is when the NBA started to gain huge viewership. Although the 60s for the Celtics was pretty great. Like people liked watching Wilt versus Bill Russell. Everyone liked that. So obviously, it was still big to an extent, but it wasn't again as big. And this is another thing I hate when people are like, these people played against milkmen and plumbers and shit. And it's like, dude, yes, a lot of these guys had second jobs because the NBA was not paying them enough for that, to live off that. Obviously not. So that's not fair. That's not a fair assessment, dude.
It's like,
I don't know. Matter. And then people will disagree on that. And that's fine. But you can't just disrespect these NBA legends based off of their competition.
Agreed.
Yeah. And in all honesty, I think for the most part, it's a very good list, save for maybe 2 or 3 people, in my opinion. How about you? Who do you think should and should not be off this list, Mario?
Should not be off this list? Well,
should not be on, or maybe should be off. I don't know.
Okay. Who should not be on? Well, me personally, it's mostly some of the younger players because, like I said, I don't think they've established themselves enough yet, with the exception of a few. Because, like I said, Anthony Davis, I think he's still too soon for him to be on this list because he still has a long ways to go. Compared to everyone else's, their track record, their accolades. Him and Westbrook, like I said, Westbrook has been in the league as long as Durant because they all came in the same class, but he hasn't had enough success.
No, I think he was the year after.
It was the year after? Okay.
Yeah, Russ was drafted the year after Durant, again. I think.
But Durant has had a little bit more success, and Harden has had a little bit more success, even though Harden has yet to win a championship. So it's just Russell Westbrook has been a little bit more inconsistent. He's taken it too many times. He's taken it upon himself and not relying on his team to really get the job done. So I'm going to say no, he should not be on this list yet. But if you were to get it together, yes, in the future for sure. So those two. Anybody else that I'm thinking of? Let's see who would not be on this list. And Lillard, yeah, I think those 3 guys. I mean, I like Lillard. He always gave the Mavs a hard time. Portland, in general, has always given the Mavs a hard time when they were really solid. But I just feel it's too soon for Davis, Lillard, and Westbrook to be considered on this list. I feel some of the other guys we mentioned, like Parker, Manu, just a few of those other guys should have been on this list.
Yeah, Alvin Hayes.
Yes.
Oh no, Elvin Hayes. No, Elvin Hayes is there.
He says, Elvin Hayes is on this one. Well, who you were just
Adrian Dantley and Alex English. Yeah, those were the other two that a lot of people thought should have been on here.
They should have been
someone
on
even
here,
said Dikabe Mutombo, which
I
don't know. Like, I like Mutombo, but I don't think he's 75. 100, when it's the 100 players list, I think that's fine. I think that'll be okay.
Yeah. But yeah, those are my three I feel shouldn't be on this list as at this point in time. But sometime down the road, for sure, I just feel that they need a little bit more experience, a little bit more, success, a little bit more grind to get to a higher level. And I think we would consider them. So, but besides that, I can't complain about the majority of it. I think it's pretty good for.
Yeah, it has the majority of the main names that you would want on an all-time list.
Yeah. So now I'm kind of curious, another 25 years down the road, when we get to the 100th anniversary, it's kind of cool to speculate. It would be nice to speculate what additional 25 players will be added to this all-time list. That would be something to talk about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they kind of gave a little bit of information on that on ESPN as well. It says, who is one active player who didn't make this list this time is a lock for NBA 100 in 25 years? So Marcus Spears said Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Paul George, Rudy Gobert, Jason Tatum, Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Trae Young, Joel Embiid, Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, and Donovan Mitchell. So
I agree with that.
I can see that. I mean, if it's also going to very much depend on how some of these other players do. Like some of the players from Memphis, if Jaren Jackson unlocks his full potential, I can see him being one. I can see John Morant being one. As far as the Knicks, if Julius Randle maintains his streak of how well he's doing, I could foresee him being on there if he plays well enough. A lot of people are going to disagree because, his performance in the playoffs was lackluster. And again, they were definitely targeting him and figuring him out in that regard. Again, and it was his first major playoff. So obviously not everyone's going to win on their first try. And their team was obviously not as good as the Hawks. So let's just keep it like that. Jokic, most definitely. Derrick Rose. See, that's an interesting one because a lot of people feel that he's going to be the first player that has won an MVP to not make the Hall of Fame even. So I don't know. It depends on how well he does in the next few years. If Derrick Rose can put himself in a position to win a championship in the next 2 or 3 years, because I don't know how much time he has left on his clock as far as being able to play. If he can at least get on a contending team and win a championship with said team, then I think he has a chance. But at this point, it doesn't look it looks kind of bleak. Because considering how much time he's missed, and see, again, people are going to use Kyrie and Bill Walton's argument, and it's just the thing is, Bill Walton, again, he had already won a championship. By the time he got injury problems and addiction problems, again, he had already been an NBA champion. And then when he sobered up, he won another NBA championship with the Celtics. So obviously, there's definitely more of a case for Bill Walton than Derrick Rose would have. You get my drift?
Yeah. So
that I'd have to see. It would be nice to have Derrick Rose on there, but I don't know. I don't see it happening unless something substantial happens for him. And Luka Doncic, it says he's already finished top 6 in MVP voting twice in his first 3 seasons. But see, here's my deal. Finishing in the top of MVP voting versus being an MVP is a bit different. if Luka like goes on a fucking tirade and takes this league by storm, even with the roster he has, then yeah, you can make that case. But I don't see that happening. This Mavericks team is not very good at the current moments for Luka to make that push. Hopefully, he gets another player that can help him get to that point. But right now, I don't foresee Luka doing that until he gets that. So I don't think finishing top 5 or top 10 in MVP voting gets you a knock into the list of the 100 greatest when that comes along. So, I mean, I was glad that Luka wasn't on this list. I would have been, look, and again, we're Mavericks fans, and I'm wearing his motherfucking shirt. Like, obviously, I love Luka Doncic. But if he had made this list, I would have been like, that's a bit much. That's a bit too soon. So, in all honesty, yeah, I think it's good that he's not on this list because he's only been in the league 3 or 4 years now. So that's not enough time, in my opinion. Granted, you could say, oh, well, he could definitely be an MVP, or he could be a Hall of Famer by the end of it all, even with his overall, resume overseas and in the NBA. Yeah, but we're talking about the NBA. So it's too soon for him. But anyhow, those were our opinions as far as the 75 greatest players list. When you see us on YouTube, or even if you listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, danos su opinión. Like, give us your opinion on what you think this list should have, should not have, and who should be on the list in the next 25 years. But anyhow, that's all we have for today. Suscríbete a mi canal y hasta la próxima, mi gente. Adiós.
Adiós. Paz.
Y también sigue a MarkTip25 en Spotify Greenroom, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram y TikTok.